That new open has really grown on me. Welcome back to On Texas Football, special live edition of On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe. He's CJ Vogel. Just wrapped up the Monday media blitz for the Longhorns. Got Steve Sarkisian press conference, player availability. We'll talk about that. CJ's back from Dallas. We're talking about a 23-6 win for Texas over Oklahoma. Looking forward ahead to Saturday's game against Kentucky. This live edition of On Texas Football is brought to you by our friends at Duck Camp. We'll tell you more about Duck Camp here later in the show. CJ, I thought there were two main themes to take away from today. Number one was, hey, Saturday was great, but we don't have everything figured out. And two, for all of our goals, and our meaning for the Longhorns, the Royal Hour, for all of our goals to still be there, we need to treat every game like it's an elimination game for an SEC championship. Multiple players, Sark all said, hey, this next game's an SEC championship game for us. So nobody, and they're saying the right things about Kentucky, but again, this doesn't feel like a team that thinks they've got everything figured out based off a great win on Saturday, but a step in the right direction, not a we have arrived type moment for the Longhorns.
Yeah, definitely. That felt like the case leaving the facility today, Jeff. You mentioned it, not just from Steve Sarkisian, but Michael Taft. We heard it from Hero Canoe and Colin Simmons saying, hey, we understand where we stand right now in the current setting of our season. We have to take every single game moving forward as if it is its own SEC championship game, meaning we can't go in there lightly. We can't lack on our preparation. There must be 100% full intent and detail to what Texas has to accomplish on a given Saturday, and that starts this weekend against Kentucky. So, yes, to your point, while the win in Dallas was sweet and the vibes significantly higher this Monday than they were last Monday, Jeff, they understand that the job is not close to where it needs to be done. On top of that, Texas has a lot of work cut out for it still.
Yeah, and there were some quotes that really stood out to me today, but I think the one that really grabbed me was Colin Simmons saying, look, we're not here, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, look, we're not here to ride the emotional roller coaster. We're not here to go up and down. We're here to go up. So from that standpoint, you like hearing that from a guy who by default is one of the leaders on your team. But I like the message, CJ, saying, hey, Saturday was great, but let's take this and do something with it, not make this the high point of the season.
Yeah, you know, and you'd like to obviously continue that straight path up as a football team, but you're going to hit some bumps and bruises. And Texas certainly with 2 bruises already on their record this year. But this felt like a game in Dallas where maybe things are starting to turn, right? You find a rhythm offensively in the run game. Your pass rush comes alive. You're playing complementary football on all 3 phases, and your quarterback looks like he's got some glimpses of what was expected coming in, right? It looks like Arch is really starting to turn a corner over the last 6 quarters or so of football that he's played, and that's great. Now it's about building on that and taking that momentum that you had in that second half against Oklahoma on the plane with you when you go to Lexington, Kentucky this weekend.
Yeah, and CJ, I just want to get to a couple of things as we break this down. Some accolades coming to the Longhorns after the win over Oklahoma. SEC Player of the Week accolades were handed out earlier today. This was in between Coffee and Football ending and the press conference starting. Colin Simmons, co-defensive lineman of the week, 5 tackles and 2.5 sacks in the Oklahoma game. Ryan Niblett, coach, special teams player of the week, obviously, with that 75-yard punt return for a touchdown. And Malik Muhammad, CJ, 2 interceptions. He's the SEC Defensive Player of the Week. A lot of guys talked today about that being the moment that I don't want to say it gave them hope, but it really solidified that they were in the game, and I think gave them some confidence. And really, as everything got unpacked today, it just seemed like confidence gradually built for this team in the Oklahoma game, to where you look up at the end of the game and, hey, you outscore Oklahoma 20-0 in the second half. You dominate the third quarter. Not just the win, CJ, but the way they won, I think, can give you signs that maybe this team is gaining some confidence and gained some on the fly on Saturday.
Yeah, I thought at the time maybe that interception wasn't going to be as important as it was for this Texas team. Of course, you intercept a football with 2 seconds left in the half. You don't have an opportunity to turn that into points on the flip side. But for a psychological side, Jeff, I think that's where I was missing it, because Texas prevents the opportunity for Oklahoma to add to its 6-3 lead. They go into halftime. They get the ball right back out of halftime, and they dominate that third quarter. We've talked about it. Oklahoma only ran 4 plays of offense in that third quarter. Texas won that quarter 10-0 and had 13.5 minutes of time of possession. Whatever happened in that locker room to build upon that interception from Malik Muhammad in the end zone, that ultimately won Texas the game, right? Everything kind of snowballed as a result of that. And, credit to the Texas players, because they mentioned today, we really banded together, and had a strong bond coming out of halftime, because we knew that was a play that was going to be very big come the end of the game. And sure enough, it was.
Yeah, and I think getting the ball to start the second half and the offense having some confidence to look as bad as they started, they were still very much in the game, had a chance to go take the lead, which they did. And, I asked Sark today about, speaking of that rolling ball of confidence, I asked him about it on third down that, hey, once you just stopped having negative plays on early downs and you set yourself up for manageable third downs, he said, yeah, the offense figured out, hey, this is a lot easier when we're not in 3rd and 12 or 3rd and 15 or 3rd and 20 or whatever it was for early in that game, and for the most part against Florida. Even Arch talked about, hey, how much more efficient you can be when the third downs are actually manageable. And you have more of the playbook available. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about, CJ. It's not the confidence of, okay, we can go win a national championship. It's the confidence of, you know what, when we don't stub our toe and we actually get out of our way, we can be a pretty good football team.
Yeah, life gets a whole lot easier, right? When you're not in 3rd and 30 or 3rd and 21. Texas, to its credit, its final 14 third down attempts, Jeff, they were 10 of 14, and their average distance go was about 6.5. So you see how easy things were when they're not stubbing their toe. To go back to that point, their first three, Texas was 0 for 3 on third downs, and their average distance on those third downs, 21.5. So life is a whole lot easier, and they figured that out, and credit to that offensive line, credit to the playmakers on the outside, understanding what they needed to do and not trying to do too much as a result, right? No holdings in the second half, no false starts, and doing so and staying on the field for 13 and a half minutes will certainly quiet the Oklahoma crowd as well. So big time credit in the execution for the Texas offense. It did its job 100%.
Yeah, and I think, Sark said it today, and look, I know we said this leading into the Florida game. It proved not to be the case, but Sark has been competing against Mark Stoops for a long time, going back to when he was on staff in Arizona, when Sark was in the Pac-10 and the Pac-12. These guys all to a man said they respect Kentucky, especially, Colin Simmons and Hero Canoe both said, hey, one thing you could tell on the tape, they play really hard. They're big. They're physical. Mark Stoops has a style of football that he's grown accustomed to playing at Kentucky, even though it might not be as effective as it once was. But, CJ, this is a Kentucky team that you will look at their resume under Mark Stoops. Again, even though that program is on the decline based on all the metrics and all the raw numbers and all the data, they still have the capability, and at least once a year, they're going to either really push a top 10 team at home or a ranked team at home. They'll beat a ranked team. Last year, they probably gave Ole Miss the loss that cost them a playoff spot. So this is a very capable Kentucky team. And as Sark said, hey, anytime you're going on the road in this league at night, it's just a different animal.
Yeah, look, they already played Ole Miss again this year, and that was a 7-point game. We heard that from Hero Canoe saying, yeah, that's a really talented Ole Miss team. Kentucky took them to the wire. That's going to be the case again. And, I don't want to put this out there already, Jeff, but you have to be able to bring that same emotion for Oklahoma on the road to Kentucky, especially under the lights in SEC play. We heard it from Steve Sarkisian saying that's what makes this conference so deep, so talented, so special to play in. It doesn't matter where, who, or when. These guys or teams can beat you in a given weekend. And right now, Texas must be aware of that. They must bring, again, that same intensity and focus from Oklahoma into Lexington, Kentucky, and prepare the same way that they would for a Georgia, an A&M, or an Oklahoma.
No doubt, CJ. Let's go ahead and thank our sponsor for this live edition of On Texas Football. That's our friends over at Duck Camp. Duck Camp makes gear for folks who live for being out there, whether that's in a duck blind at sunrise or on the 40 acres for a Saturday kickoff. Born right here in Austin, Duck Camp builds best-in-class hunting and fishing apparel that works just as well for a full day in the field as it does for a long day of tailgating. From sun protection shirts that keep you cool during those early season scorchers to their iconic game series hats that feel like instant classics, Duck Camp gear is ready for football season, hunting season, and every season in between. Get out there, stay out there, and hook them. Shop Duck Camp at duckcamp.com. And when you do, use the promo code OTF25, that's OTF25, to get 25% off of your purchase at duckcamp.com. CJ, as we continue to break down what we heard today from Sark and the players, I thought it was interesting. Michael Taft came to the defensive arch. Sark did in the post game, and finally got to ask Arch today if he was aware of the article in The Athletic that I don't think anybody liked it. Again, when you got Longhorns, Sooners, and Aggies all on the same page that something is wrong, you probably made a grave mistake. Arch said he wasn't aware of it. Whether he was or not is irrelevant. He said he wasn't. But I actually liked his response. He said, look, I didn't play well, and everybody's going to have their opinions. But I think it goes back to the fact that, look, this is kind of what you're dealing in his position. It's a unique position. It's really unlike anything we've seen in college football. Quarterbacks, Sarkis talked about this, and we know this following the game. Quarterback's always going to get a disproportionate amount of the credit when a team wins, a disproportionate amount of the blame when a team loses. But CJ, we're going to have to just continue to ride this wave with Arch. Saturday was really good, but even he said, hey, Saturday was great, but still got a lot to work on. To your point, you mentioned that earlier. But Texas wants to go up in terms of confidence, but this Arch wave, we're just going to have to continue to ride it.
Yeah, we've talked about this. The highs with Arch are going to be extreme highs. The lows with Arch are probably going to be lower than anything you've ever seen from a single quarterback in the country, and that's to be expected. You're a Manning, you're at the University of Texas, you put that together, and the rational tastes go out the window. But for Arch specifically, going back to this weekend, he had a pretty clever response, Jeff. He said, look, when people tell you, to block out the noise, you block out the noise. But when 100 people are sitting there texting you to block out the noise, well, then you start to wonder what the noise is, right? So, yeah, he did not or was not aware, he said, of the biggest flop article, and credit to him. We heard Parker Livingston after the game in Dallas say Arch maybe checked his phone one time and the two lived together. And so I'm sitting there saying, hey, maybe he's got one of those burner butterfly phones, Jeff, where he's got two buttons. You call mom, you call dad, and you call 911 maybe. So maybe that's what he's dealing with now. But for Arch to have that even keel approach to just about everything, I think it speaks to his maturity on and off the field. On top of that, it speaks to his locker room having his back as well, saying we've got you regardless of who is saying what or what the outside perception is of this program.
CJ, what'd you make of the talk about Nick Brooks today? A lot of Nick Brooks questions, not just for Sark, but for the players also. Hero Canoe had some really good things to say about Nick Brooks. And, I thought it was interesting, Sark talking about kind of the weight journey that Nick Brooks has been on. Said he got here at 360. He's probably, in the 330s right now, kind of low 330s. So the conditioning is better. And look, that's a guy, I don't know if you get a mulligan at this level per se, but I was easier on him than maybe a lot of people were after the Florida game, because that is an insanely tough spot for a true freshman who's never played guard before to get thrown into that game. And you can look at the PFF numbers and, take those for what they're worth. But CJ, the bottom line was Nick Brooks played with the kind of physicality, the kind of edge. And Sark even said, hey, he gives us some of what DJ Campbell did a couple of years ago, a guy that gives you a little bit of attitude, a little bit of edge. It's what this offensive line needs right now.
It absolutely is. And what's funny, there's a clip going on around after the game of DJ Campbell walking into the locker room post-game, walking up the ramp, and Sark's got the golden hat in his hand, and he looks at DJ, he embraces him, and he says, only one personal foul today? And that's the kind of energy that he means about DJ Campbell. And to hear that about Nick Brooks as well, there's the nasty on the offensive line that we don't see a lot of, right? I don't think Texas had a lot of it last year. This year, obviously, you maybe had a DJ Campbell, maybe a Trevor Gooseby at times, but nasty wasn't their forte. But I think when you throw a Nick Brooks in at guard, now you can look at both guards and saying, oh, we can use them in space. We can use them pulling or running the outside zone. And I know that they're going to move the people in front of them. It might not be the right person, as we've talked about, but if that's the worst that we're going to see from Nick Brooks is that Florida game, and each game moving forward is going to be a step in the right direction, you're going to be dealing with a very talented football player as this season moves on. And he showed some really positive glimpses, Jeff, and that's only going to improve as he gets more familiar with the position. Again, one that he is brand new to.
Yeah, I want to go back to Arch real quick, because Sark talked about, he was asked about the scramble drill and basically how, playing with the receivers. He equated it to, hey, it's kind of you're in the park and playing sandlot football. That's basically what scramble drill breaks down to, which we know it does. But Sark talking about Arch getting a better feel for it, the receivers getting a better feel for Arch. And I thought it was really interesting, CJ, even though it wasn't a scramble drill situation. And actually, you mentioned this on Twitter. You got the quote with the breakdown. The touchdown pass to DeAndre Moore, that was not the route he was supposed to run. He just kind of felt it a little bit. That goes back, CJ, to what we're talking about. As you gain confidence, as that stuff builds, your instincts start to take over. You stop playing so tight, you relax a little bit, and you start making plays. You get out of the, you get into your comfort zone, really, which is your instincts taking over. That was really the beauty of the offense in the second half against Oklahoma, is There weren't a lot of robots out there. It was guys understanding what the situation called for and going to make plays. That's the thing, I think, more than anything, along with the physicality that you got to try to bottle up and take with you going forward.
Yeah, playing free, playing with instincts. When your quarterbacks and wide receivers are able to do that on the same page, good things are going to happen, especially when you have the arm talent and escapability of a quarterback like Arch Manning behind you. So that was great to see. We also heard Sarkisian mention that third down throw to Parker Livingston backs up against Texas's own end zone. Probably the best throw we've seen from Arch this year as well. I don't know if many people would disagree with that considering the time and circumstance, but a heck of a throw. It's fantastically beautiful. How about that? From the end zone view as well, Jeff. But it's great to hear that rapport is building with the wide receivers and Arch as well, and it's only going to continue to do so as they get more and more reps together.
Not a felon. I think there's been some really good comments in the chat, so thanks everybody for participating. But not a felon with 2 right here said it's all about learning from stupid mistakes first. Once you don't repeat stupid mistakes, you get better, and that goes back, CJ, to the offense. Hey, look, when you stop committing penalties and you don't have negative plays on first down that get you behind the chains, and you can actually get into a rhythm, this offense is capable of putting things together. You were telling me some numbers just in terms of where Texas sits in the SEC as a team and individually, statistically. Look, this might not be an offense that sets the world on fire, but if Saturday proved nothing else, CJ, it's like, yeah, when this offense gets out of their way long enough, they can put together drives that can get you enough points to where if the defense is doing its job and the special teams is doing its job, they may not be masterpieces, but you're going to win some ball games in the SEC.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. You look back at the losses Texas has had, and it's all about staying out of its own way, right? Florida, Texas couldn't stop but be in its own way, right? It was its own obstacle on a number of drives, especially in that first half. You go back to Ohio State, and I thought actually Texas wasn't really its biggest obstacle until they got down into the red area. And then you didn't see the execution that was required, but you saw the ball move all the way down the field. And moving forward, we heard from Sark today, especially when talking about Mason Shipley, saying, I know that he's got a leg that can make 55 and 56-yard field goals. That's why we threw him out there. So if that's the case moving forward, well, look, maybe I need to recalibrate a little bit on how aggressive I am on fourth downs. Maybe I need to just sit back and let him go out there and attempt some of these kicks. And so that tells me, Jeff, that if Texas is able to just stick to the script, don't allow holdings and false starts to back things up like they did at times in the first half against Oklahoma, Texas will move the ball. They will put points on the board, and ultimately with that defense, all you need is 21 points. I'll update the stat, but things are pretty good when you have 21 points or more in a given game.
CJ, as we close this out, maybe the last thing I'm looking at is, can the defense continue to be a defense as they've been under PK the last few years? Worry about stopping the run first and foremost, and that opens up the opportunities to rush the passer. You look at Kentucky, CJ, this is not a bad run game at all. They're averaging a little over 150, almost 160 yards on the ground per game. Dante Dowdell averaging 4.4 carry, 200, almost 250 yards on the year. Seth McGowan, who, CJ, I don't know how he has eligibility left. It seemed like he played with Malik Jefferson at Poteet back in the day.
Yeah.
But Seth McGowan, their leading rusher with a little over 430 yards, averaging 5.5 per carry, 7 touchdowns. So this is a Kentucky team, CJ, that can challenge you in the run. I thought it was interesting. Ethan Burke said that they changed some things technique-wise on the edge that made a difference in the run against Oklahoma. But that's the key. How does Colin Simmons and Brad Spence and Lance Jackson, how do these guys become effective pass rushers? Well, you earn the right to rush the passer by being really good against the run, helping your offense get ahead. And then when it turns into a throw game at the end, now you can tee off and you can be where Florida was a couple of weeks ago against Texas, where, hey, we know you have to throw the ball. We can pin our ears back and get after the quarterback because it's pretty obvious what you're going to do.
Yeah, 100%. You got to stop the run, and Kentucky does a very fine job at establishing that run, right? It's probably their most consistent piece of their team in general, right? You've seen some quarterback turnover. We heard Michael Taft say, hey, Cutter Boley is the guy now. We watched him firsthand last year. He can sling it, but we know right now that run game is going to be the focal point. We'll see what Cutter Boley looks like against this Texas secondary once again. But right now, Kentucky does have a big offensive line. I think that's a pretty underrated aspect of their game. They recruit a lot of big humans, and evidently big humans, as we've seen, it doesn't matter unless they can move, unless they can block, unless they can play physically. They do that right now over there in Lexington, and Texas has to bring that same physicality as this weekend on the road.
Yep, and we'll continue to talk, CJ, throughout the week. One thing Sark also mentioned, hey, defensive line depth. Now you're getting to the point in the season where depth is going to start to take over. Hero Canoe, Alex January is back in the mix now. We've seen Hero a lot. Murad Watson, you're starting to see Levon Johnson a little bit more. So you're starting to see, obviously, we talk about Lance Jackson and Brad Spence. You're starting to see this Texas defensive line depth take over and be a factor in games. They're going to need that down the stretch. But we'll keep talking about it on the channel and over at ontexasfootball.com as we move along, as we get out of the win over Oklahoma, celebrating that, breaking that down, talking about it, analyzing it, and looking ahead to Saturday's road game against Kentucky. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to Duck Camp for sponsoring it. Thank you to the entire On Texas Football staff. If you're not a member, over to ontexasfootball.com. Get over to the site right now. Sign up using the promo code OTFOG, and that'll get you a discount. That'll get you 1 year of access at ontexasfootball.com for $39.95. Make sure you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas game this season. For CJ, for Matthew, for the On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.